how to deal with low vibrational individuals. Now we have to understand what defines a low vibrational individual. Now a low vibrational individual is a negative person, a person who seeks control, a person who gets off the validity of, being negative, a person who seeks and needs the validation of doing things that is contrary to the best benefit of the individual the thing is being done to. And so when we identify a low vibrational individual, the best offense for dealing with this type of individual is starving them of attention. Now you have to understand, to low vibrational people, to fragmented individuals, attention is their currency, and every time you feed them with attention, they get off to it, and you are basically fueling the ammo for them to use and warp you to, give them more validation by initiating, exchanges, by initiating, interpersonal exchanges, whether that's through communication, whether that's through aggression or agitation or any subtle signs of them on your mind, them being in your consciousness. You have to understand that them being in your consciousness is what's going to feed them, what's going to feed them to continue going. And so we have to truly understand how to deal with these individuals. Now, when you ignore this type of individual and you do not feed them fuel, they will start thirsting for your energy. You have to understand that your attention is simply mental energy, and when you ignore that individual, but without, a certain aggressive, or without, this weird stance, like you're ignoring them, but the only reason you're ignoring them is because they're pissing you off. But if you genuinely ignore them, but you act without emotion, this is where they starve. They thrive on the energy and motion, the emotion. They get off to the energy vibrating in your mind. They get off to the energy being exchanged. But when you give no emotion, and you can exchange, you can communicate with them, and you can deal with them in the environment without feeding them the energy that you have, without giving them control and possession over your mind, by feeding into their, whatever they're trying to do to piss you off. This is where they begin to start thirsting for your energy. And when they start to thirst for your energy, this is where they've placed themselves beneath you, because now you're operating from a superior standpoint where they need your validation to feel something within themselves in that environment, within that moment. And so when they start thirsting for your energy, you will see the shadow of this individual express itself to high degrees. This individual will now start expressing themselves in ways that they would have not expressed themselves if they were, if you were feeding them subtle signs of agitation and irritation. And when they start to expose themselves, this is where you can weaponize their own behavior against them. And so low vibrational people, when you starve them of the attention, of the validation, of the emotion, they will expose themselves. And when they expose themselves, this is where you can further exploit your superior standpoint to expose their behavior to the people around you. And the moment you have the people around you in unisync agreeing with how you feel, this is when you win. Because in all reality, when the people around you can see what you're trying to point at, now it's easier to deal with a specific individual, because you're not the crazy one, and you're not the one reacting and feeding the aggression, putting yourself in the inferior position, because that individual is now, you've reacted, and now everyone is looking at you like the villain. Why is this person so aggressive? This person does not control the behavior. But the moment you can starve the manipulator, the low vibrational individual, from attention, from emotion, they will expose themselves through the thirsting for your attention. They will begin to operate from a shadow unconsciously, and that shadow is going to expose them to themselves. Because you have to understand that these people, they're not, mentally strategizing to drain you of your life source. These are very fragmented, low vibrational individuals, And these are the people that wake up and don't want to be themselves. And so when we see a person who wakes up and doesn't want to be themselves, they're going to channel that self-hatred onto people. They're going to project that internal chaos onto the external, objects around them, because that individual cannot reflect and look within themselves to find out what they hate so much about themselves, and to do something to solve it, to do some shit, to fix some shit. This individual can only operate from a standpoint of projection, because if they reflected, they would have to deal with, quote unquote, too much work on themselves. But we all know that the work of self is infinite, and we should always embrace our flaws to correct them and then further the perfecting of self. Now, I'm not saying be perfect. I'm saying to perfect yourself. When you see indolence, when you see flaw, when you see catastrophe, this is where you whip out the fucking, self-reflection. You pull out the mirror and you look at yourself. You question yourself. You debunk yourself. You figure out what is irritating you and, what you're projecting onto other people. You find out the internal resistances within your mind, so you don't go around projecting that onto other people. And you have to understand that when you project, this is an internal unconscious thing, because you are not aware to the fact that you have this internal resistance within you. You are just simply agitated very easily. You lose composure very easily, and you're not happy and you don't know why. But if you looked in the mirror and confronted yourself and you truly inspected what the fuck is making you so angry with yourself, this is where the personal confrontation phase before the personal development begins. The curing of your mental resistances, the overcoming of past events that impressed your conscious in a negative way to form you and mold you into a negative person. You have to understand that 80% of human thoughts are negative, but you can solve that by solving yourself. So many people are negative because so many people neglect the responsibility to look at themselves raw and unfiltered and correct that shit. And so when you deal with low vibrational individuals, the formula of defeating and, outwitting the devil, as they say, is to allow this individual to express themselves in such a manner that everyone around you is like, what the fuck is going on with this person? And now you are in the power position. You have to understand how mental dynamics work. You have to use your mind. You have to strategize when it comes to events like this. And not only is it fun, not only does it make life funner, but it makes them look dumber. And so you have to truly think when you are in certain environments with certain people, when you look at certain people and the way they behave, when you react, this is you putting yourself in a position where you don't want to be in. Now, everyone's got their eyes on you thinking, what the fuck is wrong with this person? But as long as you can starve the person who is, unconsciously projecting their internal chaos onto you, this is where you can starve them and drain them of your validation, because they need validity. They need to think that what they're doing holds weight. And once they realize that you're not feeding them the weight of validity that they need, they will project more weight to make you feel more of what they're trying to project. And so the weight of what they're trying to project is not being validated, so they're going to project even more. And when they start projecting more, this is when other people can see what they're trying to project, because the weight is no longer hidden in the shadows, no longer subtle. It's very obvious, and the more you starve them, the more their darkness will be revealed by the light. And the light is simply self-composure and self-mastery at the highest level. It's that simple. Peace!